Just. Very good. Thank you. Glad you remembered. I forgot to remind you. All right, who we got first? Because I redid my list here. Justin. Justin DeMarco, I know you're here. I see you. Krista Silva. He was here a minute ago. Greg Johnson.
I'm here.
Oh, good. Mary Brandley is going to be a few minutes late. Hillary Griffiths not here. Brian.
Yes.
Let's see. So Rob Rouleau. No. Jennifer Gaudette.
Here.
Thank you. Wayne White.
Yep, I'm here.
You. Let's see. I'm here. Mark Anderson.
Here.
Anthony. I know I see him. He's there. Matthew Johan. Nick.
I'm here.
That's perfect. That's a quorum. Okay, the governor. What does the governor have to say? Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, signed into law by Governor Healy on March 29, 2023, several pandemic-related relief provisions suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 20, were further extended until March 31st of 2025. All members of the public are invited to join the meeting virtually, either by computer or phone, as noted below. If you're joining virtually, video and audio will be turned off for public participants unless otherwise stipulated by the chair. And we will keep people's visitors' audio blocked for now. But I did want to make one announcement, and this is our first meeting where the new public participation at meetings ordinance or ruling has come down from the Board of Selectmen, Select Board. So the public will have time for comments, questions, concerns, whatever the case might be. We'll try to give equal time, not allowing too much time, but a couple of minutes each person who has something to contribute to the meeting. Happy to hear from them, but we need to make sure that when people do decide to speak or want to speak, I will allow them in. We need to know their name, their address, including town and city in case they are non-Maynard residents. And we will do that after we've really gotten through, I think, about 90% of the meeting. We will have finished. I think we'll be, once we have all of the presentation completed and the participants in this meeting who are members will have their time to ask their questions and answers. When that is done, we'll open it to the public. So Phil, I think maybe you're taking it.
Just a moment. This is Roger Stillwater, and I haven't been able to get on the Zoom.
Oh, so y'all the one that's ending in 758. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
I don't know why you can't get on the Zoom.
I keep clicking on the link, and it won't let me in the meeting. And the ID doesn't look right when I click on the link. It doesn't match what's on the website.
Really?
I don't know if anybody else is having problems.
I have not heard any yet. I have not heard. You're the first one, and you're the only one that's actually in on a phone, because we're wondering who that number was.
I had some problems, Jerry, getting in from the town website. I had to go back out and turn on to my email and go in through the email from Colleen.
Oh, okay.
Could somebody send me an email link?
Yeah, is there somebody on here who could possibly send Roger an email link to?
Yeah,
Do you need my email address?
no, I got it, Roger. I'll send it right now.
Yeah, Phil will
Okay,
send it now.
thank you. Thanks,
Perfect.
Phil.
Yeah.
All right.
And when you're done that, Phil, meeting is yours and Chris, I guess.
Yeah, Chris is gonna share his screen. All right, Roger, I just sent you an email with the link.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So agenda wise, well, I guess Jerry, yeah, agenda wise, you want to do approval of prior meeting minutes first?
Yes. And thank you for reminding me of that too. We had meeting minutes from, and I did not print them. I don't think I have them all year. There were 3 meetings. I don't have them with me. I don't know if somebody has the 3 dates. I
They-
apologize for not having them.
I have them in the email you sent out from a little earlier this week. It was 2/27/23,
Yep.
3/20/23, and 4/10/23.
4:10. Perfect, and I assume everybody has time. I've sent them out a couple of times to allow people time enough to take a look and review. I've not received any comments. So I would certainly entertain a motion to approve those 3, the minutes of those 3 meetings, February 27th, March 20th, and April 10th. Would somebody make a move on that and a second?
Make a motion to approve those minutes referenced.
Okay.
Second.
Second, Chris. Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, by roll call, I'm going to go for approval. Justin,
Yes.
Christopher,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
thank you. Hillary is not here. Brian.
Yes.
Who else we got? Robert Lowe is not here.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Jerry.
oh, you are. Very good. Thanks, Rob.
No problem. Thanks.
Markham, Miss Tardy.
I'm gonna mark him as tardy. You'll just stay after school too. Let's see, who else? Jennifer,
Yes,
thank you. Wayne,
Yes.
yes, Mark Anderson,
Yes.
thank you. Anthony Madey,
Yes.
thank you. Matthew, Johan joined, guess not. Nick,
Yes.
excellent, thank you. Those are all the voting members. All 3 sets of meetings are approved. I'll make sure Colleen has that information first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thank you. So first item is feasibility study budget update. Chris, if you want to just go to the next slide. So since we last met on April 10th, the only change to the feasibility study budget is Mount Vernon Group, their $500,000 feasibility study contract is now paid in full. That was paid last month. So what we have paid to date, bottom of column D1, is that $846,000 approximately out of the $1 million feasibility study budget. So that's where the feasibility study budget stands. So you have OPM paid in full, architect and engineers paid in full, and then just some minor unpaid items relative to the environmental and site expenditures of roughly $4K. Are there any questions on the feasibility study budget? Okay, with that, we'll move ahead to the schematic design submission update. Chris, you want to take it away?
Unmute here. So we've submitted the schematic design and
DESI submission, which is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We did receive a preliminary review, and some of those comments were just the address of the SPED delivery methodology letter. They wanted it addressed to a certain individual within MSBA. They were looking for some certified school building committee meeting minutes, which have been forwarded to them as well. And they asked for a couple of space summary clarifications, regarding mislabeled in 1 or 2 locations for offices. We anticipate a full submission review comment summary in the coming week or 2. They're currently reviewing the entire submission. And then we have a scheduled project scope and budget and project transition meeting on Wednesday, 5/18. So that gets us to where we are at this point regarding the schematic design. Once we get the review comments, we'll provide responses within 2 weeks, and then we can share with this committee what some of those comments were. Questions on our submission?
I have a quick
All right.
question, probably just procedural. Do you need anybody from the committee when you have your meeting with them? Their preliminary back and forth or whatever?
Or which part, Nick? Like
Um,
the review comments?
You said in maybe a couple weeks you would meet with them to go over something, right?
So they're going to issue their review comments within the next week or 2. We will have 2 weeks to provide a response.
Oh, I thought there was
if
a
the-
meeting in the middle, and at every other meeting so far, you've brought somebody from the board with you to them, so that's fine. Never mind.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
so Nick, that last bullet point, Nick, is kind of the project scope and budget / transition meeting to go from module 4 to module 5. So at that meeting, Superintendent Haas will be there, Collier's, Mount Vernon Group, Greg Johnson from the town, and Jerry as SBC chair. They'll be at that meeting.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? So if we move forward, the May 3rd community forum update, for those of you who weren't there, there were a good response from both committee members and public. And these are some of the topics that were discussed once our presentation took place. So the IR rebates, continuing questions about whether it's 40% of the entire HVAC system or just the geothermal components, well field, heat pumps, piping, et cetera. As everybody knows, our budget currently includes both options. We've shown it both ways as to what that would be until we are still looking to find clarification on that. So we'll continue to review some of the documents that have been put out by the various organizations. There's a strong sense or strong input about not having fossil fuel systems for the new school, right? No gas due to environmental concerns, et cetera. There were some questions about the payback time and how long that would take. Many of the participants felt that even if it's going to take longer, it's still worth it. We talked about geothermal operating costs versus the initial costs and how that would work out. That has been in the chart, which will be showing you shortly. Chart that's last updated before the meeting. There was a question about AC in the classrooms. So right now, with a gas-fired system, we have partial AC in some areas with displacement ventilation in classrooms. And then should the project move towards a geothermal, all electric system, we would provide AC in all the classrooms. However, and I'll let Marty speak to this later, but if we did do a gas system, if that was the way that the community or the building committee wanted to go, but they wanted AC, we could do AC with a displacement system. So that still would work. One of the local residents brought up the question about pedestrian access. So right now, as everybody knows, once you cross Great Road, there are no further road crossings to get to the existing building. And asked the design team to continue to look at other opportunities of not having a crossroads. I did discuss with that individual afterwards, because he came up to me and we're kind of talking it through. He's, I believe, an engineer, familiar with information and construction. But one of the things we've looked at, and I can certainly show you in a slide as we move along, there is only one necessary crossing because we have a perimeter road around the building, which is somewhat required for, it's there for two reasons. One, having a perimeter road will give us a larger area of building, right? So the building code says, this is what your area should be, this is what your height should be, but she'll give you an increase if you do a fully sprinkled building. They'll give you an area increase if you have full perimeter access. During our discussions with the public safety, they asked that question as well. And we did tell them we were in fact providing full perimeter access around the building. And so we've worked it out, and I can actually show you now that in fact, there would be only one crossing. So previously, a few months ago, we asked our landscape architect, and once you come in off Great Road, right, this orange shaded line would bring you to a potential crossing, but that would be more for the public if they're parking in Crow Park. But walkers could and would conceivably continue along the path until they get further up. The buses and staff would have already come in, and they could make that one crossing at the play areas. They would now be inside the curb line to the school. So that would be the minimal crossings. I did remind this resident that we would in fact put crossing signals there, pedestrian signals, so that if there's somebody looking across, we could have flashing lights, et cetera, to notify any vehicular traffic. He seemed to be very open to that and pleased with that kind of design, but just asked that we take further look at it, which we indicated we would. There was a question about existing building upgrades prior to new construction completion. So we've never had the issue where the building would require or needed to be upgraded, code, et cetera, prior to new construction. Should this project move forward, then typically the district puts off any upgrades with the exception of anything that's absolutely necessary to continue operation of school. You know, if a heater goes down, or as Brian had mentioned before, this past season, he had a couple of unit ventilators go down. He brought in some temporary provisions, but there would not need to be any code-related upgrades to that existing building. And then there was also a question about school design capacity, current versus proposed. I believe the current capacity is somewhere around 430, 435 in that area. Our proposed is around 495. So the goal is, as we've discussed with the district, they're looking to increase enrollment in the pre-K, K areas, et cetera. So those are some of the topics that came up. We provided responses. You have anything you want to add, Phil, on some of that, or?
No, I think you covered it. I think it was, we appreciate the building committee members that attended. It's always good to have building committee presence at these community forums. And I think there was probably somewhere around 20 to 25 attendees that weren't building committee members. So, you know, it would have been great to have more, but it was a good show out.
I'd like to say one thing. I think that was a sticking point in the meeting back and forth was placement of the wells and trying to get the town to understand the approach of a schematic design. I think there's sort of an unspoken chess game that was going on between us and them, trying to explain that we're illustrating worst case scenario to cover potential costs so that we don't get surprised later, and that we will take steps in the future as we progress the design to, you know, do every step we can to minimize costs, to work down from that. And it slowly came around, I think, to the group as a whole, but there still was I think it was brought up, it was sort of a trust issue as a whole. How can we trust you? You're selling us the most expensive thing. Can't you do it better? And like, we plan to do it better. So there was just some of that dynamic that it's hard when the public sees an organized presentation. They might feel us pushing it upon them to say, this is what we're doing. This is everything we're doing. And in our drawings and our presentation were so crisp that it looked like these are the answers. We have come up with the answer. So I think there was a slow turning around of we're going to keep working. We got another year and a half to go on this. We're going to evolve things, and people sort of get coming along, but it's still hard, I think, for the public to accept the big number and then think that we're going to be able to get it less later. So that's I think where the big hurdle is. I think we all know that, but it was interesting to see some people in the community reach out about specific things. You're saying this costs more. Can't you do it better? Maybe
Yeah.
the Christmas keep up there. If we can, we will. So kudos to you, Chris, for trying to explain that in, I'd say, maybe 4 or 5 different versions of questions about slightly related things. We're going to try to do better. So.
Yeah, Nick, thank you for that. I'd like to add on to that because you bring that up, and one of the questions was about the well field and its location, right? We obviously would like to eliminate any temp heating plants and have it part of the phase 1 portion of work. And a question came up about locating it under the parking areas, right? And as I said before, and I still maintain, and you alluded to in your comment, was, there's still some more information and review and planning and research that needs to be done. But I did take a look further at that potential because, I'd like to have the answer for the next time. And while I may not have the full answer, I think I can certainly elaborate on that a little bit. So if we go to the potential geothermal well field, as you mentioned, Nick, we look at worst case scenario and budget for that. And as a design team, we always strive to improve, make everything tighter, make everything less expensive, more efficient, et cetera. But if you take a look at the well field and where it's located, this is the approximate number of wells, which are about 75. They're 25 feet apart, which is our optimum spacing. And then one of the questions about locating it under the parking lot, well, part of the problem with that, I didn't realize it at the time and it puzzled me, but if you look at the dashed outline of the building, the existing building takes up a majority of that new parking lot in the front. So in fact, it still would have to be part of phase 1 at this part of the schematic design level, because we got to maintain a working, I should say, a clear area from that existing building and develop our phasing line so that if there's an issue, if kids need to exit that school, our fencing, our work limit isn't right up against that building along this portion. So right in here. So here's the existing building, which does cover a good portion of this parking lot. So that being said, we're still going to look as we move forward to get those well fields better located if we can. Maybe we don't need 75 when we have the actual design. Maybe it's down to 70, 60. I don't know. Maybe we can drill them deeper and reduce the quantity. That'll be something we have to work out once we have our HVAC design, and then work with the well designer to say, okay, here's what we've got. What are your solutions? I did have a conversation with him earlier today. He mentioned that while it's optimal to keep the well field intact as a group because it makes it more efficient, there's less piping, et cetera. If we had to, we could possibly split those up. Maybe some of them could run in the front and along the back of the building under roads or parking. But again, he said, until we have a design, he can't give me that answer. And we have to also look at how we're going to phase this a little bit more in depth as we move forward. So that I wanted to just bring up to add on to some of the information that was provided last Wednesday. So hopefully that's going to clarify a little bit why we haven't just put them under the parking lot. The building still resides over much of that proposed front area.
Go ahead, Nick.
Something I learned at my visit to the Acton School was the potential for what they call a quad pipe system. So one slightly bigger hole might have 2 runs of pipe that go down and back up again, which maybe has a premium per hole. But if we are then drilling less and not being under the school, maybe it pays for itself. That's the kind of thing I assume you're talking about when it comes to getting an actual design, see what the characteristics are. I mean, I assume that the person you talked to gave you a conservative number to give you a rectangle to give you about how many, so you could do just what you did before, which is if I have to slap these on the building or on the site. So those are the kind of things that I'm sure we're going to get into as we keep going forward, if that's the path we choose. I know I found it very interesting about the evolving technology. So I think we're going to need to be creative in choices and solutions. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are looking to do more.
Yeah, exactly. We'll continue to do that, Nick, and whether it's, you know, a two pipe or multi-pipe, drill deeper, have less quantities, et cetera. Those are things we'll review with the, you know, the well designer once we get to that portion of the design. Right now, we gave him the maximum anticipated load, I think was, you know, I forget what we had. And he said, okay, if you're going to space them 25 feet apart, which is optimal, this is approximate area and the number of wells you would need at a depth of about 500 feet. So, you know, these aren't shallow depth wells and borings. But we can certainly reach out with any further questions as we move along. But once we have a full load capacity and we can engage him in detail for the design, we can talk about, you know, phase 1 versus phase 2, splitting them where there would be multi wells per hole per se, and at what depth. So again, we're still schematic design, kind of big picture, but we'll look to make this as efficient as possible. Any other questions? Okay. So we move along. We also included an updated life cycle cost analysis, refined some of the numbers based on the schematic design estimates for costing of systems and wells and things of that nature. Central heat source has been updated to include, again, the Eversource incentive rebates, any IRA rebates, energy costs, maintenance costs, and then total operating over the course of the year. The geothermal, I'll jump down to the gas fired. You know, that didn't change much. It's still, you know, pretty efficient system. Doesn't require a lot of maintenance. It's low initial costs, et cetera. Has a life cycle cost of 8.3 million, but we did update a little bit more in detail the central geothermal heat pump system. And we broke that down into 2 categories or 2 line items. One, right, we still have the $10 million initial cost based on extended general conditions, temp heat pump, heating system, et cetera. Eversource incentives don't change. The Inflation Reduction Act, we're still breaking it down into 2 systems, whether it's 40% of the costs of the wells field, the pumps, or 40% of the cost of the HVAC. And just as a reminder, that's still a little conservative because if we can guarantee that the materials are all made, produced in the US, we can get a 10% adder to that. We just haven't carried that because there are still some chances that materials can be produced outside the states, and that may be based on availability, et cetera, lead time. But we're showing both, and our budget does include the ability to do this system. We've updated the energy costs, maintenance costs, total operating, and then provided an updated LCCA with the rebates. Obviously, if you look at the end results, if you can get 40% of the entire system, your life cycle costs are less expensive than the gas fired. So that'll be a consideration for this committee to make in the upcoming meeting. In the meantime, we're still going to try and dig into all the available material that's out there. I know Roger Stillwater has been kind enough to share some of that recently with some of the IRAs, and he also shared some of the tax incentives information, which is a little bit different. I think that may be based on specific districts and towns. I haven't read too much about it, but I'll try and get into that a little bit further as well. Any questions on our LCCAs?
I'll just jump in, Chris.
Sure.
So like we mentioned, I want to say it was at the last building committee meeting, you know, the goal is to have a HVAC system really finalized by next month's building committee meeting or at next month's building committee meeting, so we can kind of get that very large decision behind us. So that's the idea of kind of revisiting this LCA slide, and building committee members, please speak up. at these public meetings, community forums, tri-board meetings, whatever it is, this is the topic that seems to be the biggest topic and most controversial. So, we want to try to figure out what's the right decision for the project, for the community, for the school district. And so whatever you all think is kind of the best way to get the info you think you need to make a vote on that, just speak up. I know when we were going through analyzing different design schemes during the preferred schematic phase, when Mount Vernon Group was putting together ad reno schemes, ground up schemes, we did a online survey to the community and kind of asked for their kind of high level feedback on all the different schemes. And that was pretty fruitful. We got a decent amount of responses. Not sure if the building committee would want us to do an online survey for this HVAC system selection topic, but whatever you all think would help you all come up with a decision for this project, we're all ears.
I think Ken has his hand up. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So a thought I had just in talking about this, or as we're going through this right now, is there a value to showing this LCCA at our public meetings? The reason I ask this is because it seems to create a bunch of distraction where people want to poke at the LCCA and the assumptions made, and people aren't understanding that this is what's used to establish a budget. And I'm just concerned that if we keep going back to a suggestion that there's still some debate about what system is going in the building going forward, that's going to create a lot of friction and undermine support in the community.
I mean, yeah, Ken, I think you bring up a great point in terms of the data that's on this LCCA slide has produced a lot of controversy. Can't argue with that. I will say, I don't know if the Maynard community would have any issue voting yes for this project if they knew it was still a question mark as to what the HVAC system was going to be. I know in an ideal world, come the fall vote, if it's a majority yes vote and we're moving forward, at that point, the design team would like to, get going with designing one system, right? So have that direction at that point. That was kind of always the idea of kind of finalizing the decision in the next month. But I mean, no argument in terms of, this data is creating controversy for sure.
Yeah, I think it is, Phil, and I appreciate your thoughts on it. That one thing that came to light in the TRICOM meeting, even before this last meeting, is that there is always going to be uncertainty around these assumptions. And, we're right now, as I look at this number, we as a sustainable school building committee are making this decision based on as if there's more precision than there is. So if we're making a decision based on what we think the community needs and not being distracted by a relatively insignificant difference and possibly a non-difference in cost. Does this make sense, Phil? Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to talk and drive at the same time with limited effect.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. I really do. Yeah, it's a terrific point.
Well, I was going to make a comment, but Mark Anderson has his hand up. Let's go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate it. So I guess what I wanted to offer the committee, in the absence of absolutely crystal clear, somebody has gone through the Inflation Reduction Act process and we know how it's going to work. In the absence of all of these uncertainties that Ken correctly mentioned, and those coming to light in the next month before we meet again, I think what this committee really needs to do as individuals over the next month is, we were charged 2 to 3 years ago with representing the whole of Maynard, all the community members of Maynard. And we need to go out and talk to the people in our circles, talk to the people that we run into, that our kids are friends with, that we see on the street walking our dog. Go out and talk to them and ask them very simple questions. How worried about the budget are you? How worried about fossil fuels are you? Are you a no vote if we put a fossil fuel system in this building? Are you a no vote if we have too high a cost? Where does the community stand? We've got a group of people that continue to come out to public forums and comment, and that's great. But there's a whole population in Maynard that we don't know where they stand. And we need to do that legwork. I spent a lot of my weekend at soccer games, at friends' houses for playing cornhole, just talking to people and trying to ask those questions and get a pulse of where people are. And I think if we all come to the meeting in June, we're probably not going to have a lot more data on which system is better. But if we can come with data about what the community feels is proper, then this committee can act in the best interest of the community, which is exactly what we were charged to do. Thanks, Jerry.
Excellent point. I mean, both Ken and Mark, excellent. I agree 100% what you both stated. And I guess I was thinking along the lines of something that I know we're trying to do. And I think a lot of people, some people are very emotional about whether it's fossil or it's not fossil. That's an issue. But there are others who are more thinking about their own home and their tax bill. And I think when we can get to a point where we can, I know I've seen some numbers out there, you know, if we can tell people, forget for a moment the issue whether it's a fossil fuel or it's coming from Pluto, but what's my personal tax impact going to be? My home is worth $300,000, and the tax rate, if we go in this direction, is going to increase by X, and if we go in this other direction, going to increase by Y. Is that $50 a year? Is that $500 a year? So I think some people are going to make the decision strictly based on that, just financial. I don't know, that's my 2 cents worth. Any other committee members have any, or Chris and Phil, any comment on what you've just heard from 3 of us?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I would say to what Mark said, you know, if committee members feel like there's value to, you know, besides committee members talking to their group, if the committee thinks there's value to doing another online survey,
Yeah.
we can put it together. I would love to hear what you all think, though. I don't want to, you know, we don't want to do it if you all don't think it would be worthwhile, but.
I think so. I was thinking about it when you commented earlier, and then when Mark brought it up and Mark started hitting certain points, I'm thinking, gee, maybe we need to put those points out there and have people actually say, well, you know, it'd be a yes vote if you went with fossil, or it would be a no vote if you went with fossil, or pick something. I think now we know far enough, we've gone over this enough times that we know what a number of the potential issues are. And I think if we were to target those issues and put them out in a survey, if we could get enough participation in the survey, then I think we'd have some direction. But we'd have to do that in the next few weeks, right, Phil? Yes.
Oh, yeah, we could get it out in short order, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It looks like Justin has his hand
Yes.
up.
Go ahead, Justin.
Good evening, everyone. I just kind of wanted to circle back to some recent surveys that the town of Maynard has put out, specifically on some hot topic items such as the bleach.
Hey, Justin, you're hitting your mute.
No, Justin, I think I just accidentally muted you. I'm sorry.
You did, Phil. Can you hear me now?
I meant to mute me and I muted you. I'm sorry.
No worries. Good evening.
Use of power.
I don't know what you heard or didn't hear, so I'll just start all over.
I think you go with bleachers.
Yeah, so you heard bleachers. All right, perfect, Nick. Excellent. So we have some hot ticket items in Maynard besides HVAC and fossil fuel components. We recently conducted, a small task force conducted a survey in regards to the bleachers. And it kind of hammers home in a much smaller sense, but very similar to this situation where people feel strongly in a want, yet at the end of it, there was a huge constraint when it came to finances. So everybody wanted press box, they all wanted bathrooms, they wanted lights, they wanted artificial turf, they wanted a whole new brand new stadium. And at the end, there was a question, are you willing to pay more for it? And every single respondent was willing to not pay more for it. So it does kind of give you an overall holistic view. It's very simple. You know, I've been in this industry a very long time. I deal with public funds. They're not my personal funds. I have a fiscal responsibility to all of our residents. It is very easy to lose track of a giant cost when it's not actually coming out of your wallet. And I say that as all of you sit on this committee, it's very easy to say, hey, what's $500,000? What's $100,000? If you made those decisions personally, that would cripple you. When you're talking about a 40, 50, $100 million project, that seems like nickels. But understand, to some, that's a lot of money, and to others, it's not. I think surveys really hammer home the fact of we may be contending with a want versus need, but at the end, if nobody's willing to pay for it, then we need to make that fiscal decision based over the want versus the need. I think a survey would be a great situation, hammered home on the HVAC components.
Yep, I agree. Good point, Justin. Thank you very much.
I agree in that you don't do a survey without having some data in there relative to the cost delta, right? For the exact reason Justin just brought up.
Yeah.
I think it's much more simplified than what's in the LCCA slide, just to kind of go, like Jerry was saying, kind of straight to the point, but you got to have it in there because, like Justin's saying, there are people that cost wise, it kind of dictates where they decide.
Oh, exactly. Ken, is your hand back up again, or was that from last time?
No, it's back up. Is that all right?
Okay.
I can
Go ahead.
I can wait my turn.
No, go ahead.
All right. So yeah, I agree that it would be a useful device in the survey to ask people what they're willing to pay for. Part of what I think we're falling into a bit of a trap and getting a whole lot of emotion generated around HVAC as if that's the only cost variable.
Yeah.
It may not even be a cost variable, but and not to pick at the design, but I will point out that 64 foundation corners versus maybe something like 20. That's probably a cost variable, and are people willing to pay for that? Polychromatic window frames. There's a whole lot of things we could look at if we really want to try to pull down the cost and evaluate whether people see a value in it. So I just wanted to make sure we're not getting drawn into a trap of looking at the issue because it garnered some attention as if it's the only variable. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, no, you're 100% right, Ken. 100% right. Justin, you put your hand back up again?
Yes, I actually just want to kind of speak to what Ken's talking about. I don't actually disagree with Ken. That's what this committee's job is. We're tasked with budget engineering. We're tasked with the dynamic nature of this project. But knowing that the fact of it, you have to kind of go in the politics here. The HVAC component is the political agenda in which these decisions are being made. I still think there's extreme value with using that political platform to gauge that the overall cost is an issue. If we see unanimously that the cost as a whole is an issue, then as a committee, we understand that we need to dig deeper in value engineering. And I truly believe that's really where the stakeholders that I'm hearing from is the overall cost, not just the specific HVAC.
I didn't mute him, I swear to God. That's not
Round up
me.
the usual suspects.
No.
Justin, you're muted again. Phil didn't
Did you
do
mute
it.
me again, Phil?
Honest to God, I didn't. No, my hands are down.
So I don't know where you guys heard, but pretty much in regards to the political idea, the political platform that's going out there, is everybody's familiar with the HVAC component. And when you're talking about really trying to garner survey feedback, if it's such a hot topic item, that will actually drive. So I think the questions in the overall survey will be vital to try to pull out if the town is really concerned fiscally or they're concerned with certain wants and needs of the project. The HVAC questionnaire could tease that out.
Excellent, thank you. And Nick's got his hand up and Jennifer has her hand. Can I pick on Jennifer for a minute? Nick, you can go right after her. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. I think a survey is a great idea. I think what Mark was saying about going out and speaking to people, we absolutely should be doing and probably should have been doing more of. And so those are all action items. I think what we need to do in terms of this survey, and I don't have the question specifically, but it can't be, do you like this bigger number or this smaller number? We need to make sure that when we're asking the questions, the numbers are linked to things and they're linked to impact. So I don't know, if it makes sense to do, what would the difference be on a tax impact on an average household with the smaller number? If those are the sorts of questions, I'm puzzling through this right now off the top of my head, so I'm sure other people have better answers. But I think, do you want to pay more money or less money is not necessarily going to get us a lot of information. So we just need to make sure whatever the questions we're asking are going to allow us to really tease out what we're trying to think about. And I do have to jump off. I apologize. I am available by text if I need to jump on for a vote. So just let me know.
Excellent, thank you, Jennifer. Good
Thank
points. Nick, go for it.
All right. Yeah, she hit on one of the things I was talking about. I've had great success over the years in working with construction projects, trying to get owners to understand costs, breaking something down to smaller, digestible numbers. And I think somewhere between what Jen's saying and what Ken is saying, if we can show in this survey, we're talking about the HVAC swing. I think it's like a $2 million up or $2 million down kind of swing. So what does $2 million mean, rung through the system of cost per person? So understanding that, are you willing to go for a fossil-free system for, your personal cost per thousand? And that's for like, $200 a year. That sounds like that's sort of the way people's, not like, holy crap, the system costs $10 million. You need to get it down to a number people be like able to calculate under their own personal, mental dollar values, like Justin was saying. I think you blow our minds away when you have a number as big as those other numbers. That was part of it. I did hear through the scuttlebutt of town that there is a survey going on or has been going on. I think it's been put out there by Green Maynard trying to, get a sense from people. I don't know if that's going to be something that's brought to our attention or brought to the select board or whatever, but I did want to hear how that came about. So I think regardless of whether or not we get a survey, I think it's important for us to somehow get the information out there about the HVAC cost per, like the swing, the small swing of that piece of budget and how that impacts taxpayers' percentages. I think that will help people a lot understand the decision. I think that was it. And then whatever survey we have put together, we got to be really careful what the questions are. I think we'll all understand that as well. Not having anything too leading and not leaving things open-ended. Everybody's going to say no if it's going to cost more. What does it mean? So I think everybody hit those items pretty well. But those are my couple points. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Good points, Nick. Thank you. Bill, back to you. I don't see any other. Oh, Mary Brandley's here.
Yeah, so I also think the survey is a great idea. And when we're doing the facts, again, we keep hammering or need to keep hammering that it's not the school or nothing, that we're maybe in the facts in the initial initial summary to say this is what we're looking at. Because when Natasha Rivera, one of the other school committee members, and I went to the seniors, that was a surprise to them. And at the end of the day, they all understand that we do need a new school. That that was pretty evident. By the way, the community forum the other night, I thought that was one of the best aspects, because you heard it from pretty much everybody that it's pretty obvious if you go through the school that we need a new one. But so just to really, for people to understand that it's, $35 million on us. And what I said to Jerry the other day is what we talked about the last two times is, this is tax money, and it's much better to, we're either going to be helping other people get schools, or we're using our tax dollars to get us a school. So another important piece. But one of the other pieces that the seniors mentioned, and I think Ellen Duggan might have reached out to Greg Johnson, is there any reprieve? Are there any tax incentives for the seniors? Because even though they understand that we need a new school, there's so many of them on fixed incomes that really understand philosophically that we need it, but they just feel like they can't afford that extra number. So I think if we can help them, or at least put out some tax incentives that they can take advantage of, that would be helpful. So.
Good points, Mary. Excellent, excellent. And you're right, it isn't all or nothing. So there's really two cost figures that could be presented, to your own personal property tax. So let's say your home was worth $300,000, and if we vote for the school, it's going to cost you, I don't know, say $600 more in taxes annually. So if we vote no, well, that's fine too. But the $35 million, $34.5 million to rehab the old school is still going to have a tax impact on your personal property, on your property tax. So people need to understand that it's an all or something. It's not an all or nothing. So I think we need to be able to push that concept out there so everybody fully understands it. Nick, I think you have, get your hand back up again? No, okay. Phil, can you see any other committee members with hands up?
It's like Deborah Bach has had her hand up for a bit. I don't know if you want us to just get, so this is the last slide, and then
I have my hand up for a long time here.
oh, well,
Yeah, Sarah Measures, I had to get on my wife's computer. Oh.
oh, there you go. Yeah, Deborah. Yeah, Roger. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I think one of the reasons that this is
Roger, just so we can stay within the new guidelines of the town, your name, address.
oh, sorry, Roger Stillwater, 17 Sunset Road, Maynard.
Perfect. Thank you, Roger.
So I think one of the reasons that this is so important is we're a week out from the town taking a vote on this HVAC system. So getting good numbers for the HVAC system, give the town in making that decision is important. And we've listened over and over and over to how there's uncertainty in this value. And I think, everybody got an email, or most probably got an email from me. There's not uncertainty here. The IRS is really, really clear about what money you can get and what you can't. The rules are laid out. And using the argument that nobody's claimed it yet because it's new does not equate to uncertainty. And to go into town meeting and say the geothermal option either costs $2 million more or $2 million less than the other option, that's not right. It costs $2 million less. That's the IRS is very clear. It applies to the entire system as long as you don't have that temporary system. So, and I would like to go into that meeting next week, having given people one number for the geothermal and not two numbers, because that's just confusing,
Admittedly, it is confusing. I will certainly not disagree with you there. Personally, I'm not 100% sure that we can sit here and say we know for a fact that what the IRS will or will not reimburse at. I don't know, because if it doesn't
Oh,
happen
did-
that way,
Did you look at the email that I
Yes.
sent and all
Yes.
the different references? I mean, the government is sending, you know, the DOE, IRS, the federal regulations. There's another one in there. All saying the same thing. And all we have to do is believe them.
well, I have to say sometimes that's a leap of faith, but I'm not
The
going to get into that.
IRS?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But anyway, no, I'm not arguing the point. I'm just stating that if we make a statement, the full committee and the design team have to fully understand that, you know, if we really believe that that's going to be a 100% reimbursement, then we make that statement. Hopefully it works out that way, because if it doesn't, and we have to come back to the town and say, oh, well, we're off by $2 or $3 million, that's not going to be, not going to look too good. But I'm not trying to argue the point. I'm just trying to clarify a couple of things. Phil or Chris, do you have any other insight into that?
I would just say, you know, Chris, if you want to go back to the life cycle cost analysis slide, you know, we have been showing, and yes, it's the conservative scope, right? It's the scope where, you know, we still don't know if within the phase 1 area of work that we can fit in 70 or 75 wells, whatever the quantity is going to be within the phase 1 work, and get it done in sequence with the new building. So we're showing, you know, the full scope plus a temp system, but we are showing 40% off of that full number, which is, you know, after the energy cost per year, maintenance cost per year, operating, you got that $6 million figure in the final column on the right hand side. So, you know, like we've been saying, we're showing both, we're showing the range, because again, there's more engineering and design work that needs to be done. We would also, and I appreciate Roger's opinion, but it would be nice to know that there was a project that got 40% off of all the components of the HVAC system. It also looks like I read somewhere where it says utility rebates usually reduce the basis. So what that tells me is once Mass Saves takes their $1.2 million, whatever's remaining, it's the percentage off of that. So I think the numbers are there at the high level point we're at.
How do you think somebody should make the decision next week? That's what they're going to be faced with. Which one do I do? Do I do the fossil fuels, or do they do the geothermal? Geothermal might cost $6 million, or it might cost $10 million. Who knows? And the uncertainty continues to be the thing that kills geothermal.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know, Roger, is, you know, we're gonna try to find out what that local tax delta is.
Yeah.
So, you know, the local tax implications, we're gonna get it in the online survey. Hopefully that, whatever that delta is, hopefully that helps shed some light on what people think and where they want to go with their decision on it.
Okay, but why haven't you reached out and made those phone calls to the DOE and IRS and stuff? I mean, you keep talking about you've done some online things, but you're not reaching out to the federal agencies that are involved. I mean, I have had numerous conversations with the DOE guy, and you know, he's totally knowledgeable. He's involved in the laying out the incentives and stuff, and writing down the regulations that go with the law. So
Yeah, Chris, who did I connect you with over at DOER?
You know, Phil, I'm looking for his name. I did speak to him for, 15, 20 minutes about it. And
DOER is state though.
Right.
Yeah, so we're talking about federal regs.
Yeah, so that person is very helpful with this topic of IRA rebate. But
He was. I spoke to, I was looking through my notes and some of it. I spoke to the U.S. Green Council, Phoebe, I forget her last name. She would not commit to saying that, yes, the entire system would be in fact covered. I spoke to Bryant Jones over at the Geothermal Group with Jay Egg and Xenia McGavi. There was one other, Marty was actually part of that call as well. And they kept saying, yeah, you should go do it. You should do it. I said, well, can you give me confirmation in writing that we will get 40% in the entire system? I said, I cannot tell a client that, from my point of view, Roger, obviously, that this is, going to happen if in fact you will not put it in writing. And these people were meeting with federal politicians on the subject. So while I certainly respect that there's a possibility, when
But
we're asking,
You're asking for it in writing, and I gave you the references all in writing, federal.
I've started going through the websites, the links that you sent. I'm not a tax attorney, so it's a little bit more, for me to understand, I've got to dig in a little deeper. But we'll do our best to provide the information. If you put that out to everybody else, maybe they can do some research as well. Some of the presentations that have been forwarded to the design team in this group, where various members of the community have kind of attended. Some of the speakers were tax attorneys, et cetera, and a lot of them had mentioned that the community that's trying to obtain these incentives should use their tax attorneys or their lawyers, people who are versed in these codes, to dig in deeper for the benefit of their town. I can only tell you what's being told to us. We will definitely look to design a building, geothermal or gas, whatever this committee in the town wants us to do. We will do that to the best of our ability. But one of the comments you make is you're asking the town to vote based on these numbers. Well, that's also relative to the overall estimate. And we're hoping to decrease the building construction, make the building more efficient so that when the bids come in, they're definitely less. That's something we strive to do. At this level, these are the numbers we have with the best information we have. As I said, I'll continue to go through the websites you sent. I'll talk to people that I can get a hold of and have them explain it to me, so that we can bring you that information. But people still have not given it to us in writing. And I know you sent those websites, but I'm going through them.
All right, thanks, Chris. And I'm going to cut this one short. Are there any other comments, committee members or any other attendees of the audience? I didn't see any.
Mike Stevens.
Yep, I see. Go ahead, Mike. Your name and address, please.
Yep. Hello, my name is Mike Stevens, 4 Bent Ave in Maynard. I would just like to emphasize that to some extent we have two ideological issues facing the town wrapped up in one, the use of our energy and the education of our kids, and they collide around the school building. As we promote the issues for education with the budget that's most at people's hearts, let's make sure that we do a good job of selling the building, not just because it has an HVAC system, but for all the other variables that go in to making it an effective cost. So I just want to make sure the focus is on the school as a whole, rather than just this one combination of two important issues. Thank you.
Thanks,
Mike, excellent comments, and thank you very much, because that's one of the things that we try to make sure that Superintendent Haas and Principal Below convey at each meeting, because we're building a school. We're not trying to build an energy center, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. We're really trying to build a school for education. Granted, it has to be fueled by something. And we've gotten hung up on that something. And I think many times we lose sight of the fact that it's a school building. And is it going to be better for the education of the students, several years from now, and 20 or 30 years from now? That's what we should be thinking about. You're right. We do have a tendency sometimes to lose sight of that and get bogged down in the engineering aspects. But thank you very much for your comments. Excellent. Appreciate that. I don't see any other hands up at this moment on the different. Okay, Nick, you get yours up. Sorry.
Yeah, super quick point. Somebody at the community forum the other day said something really concise and nice. It's not a question of whether or not the geothermal heat pump system is worth it. It's a question of when it's worth it. If it is less to operate and it doesn't completely fall apart in the same time frame as the other systems, it just, depending on the rebates we get, does it pay for itself in, 10 years, 20 years? It will pay for itself if it costs significantly less to have, operate, and use than the other systems. That's something that's worth thinking about too, is yes, there's an upfront cost, but if the town is in the right mindset for, even past this 20 years, it will eventually pay for itself. That's sort of, something to think about. Maybe part of our survey to make sure that the questions about paying now to, have something that lasts 50 years with less cost than something else. I'm not using the right terms, but somehow you got to bake a little bit of that into it.
Good point, Nick. Thank you. If I don't see any other questions at the moment, and I don't want to extend this meeting any longer than is necessary, Phil, we
Yeah.
go ahead, Phil.
Just one more slide, just the timeline update. So,
Yep.
So we're at our May 8th school building committee meeting, May 18th, like Chris mentioned. I want to say that's next Thursday. We have our transition meeting with MSBA, kind of go over project scope and budget. That was part of the schematic design submission, and kind of talk about the transition from module 4 to module 5 and 6. June 5th is currently slated to be our next building committee meeting. And, obviously a lot of talk about kind of making that be the meeting where we make a HVAC system decision. But, in the event, through putting this online survey together, getting building committee members to kind of confirm they're good with the questions in it, potentially the June 5th meeting happens, and then maybe a week or two after that is another building committee meeting where we make that vote, whatever it might be. But ultimately, the goal is in the next 4 to 6 weeks. June 21st is the MSBA Board of Directors meeting, in which they'll approve the schematic design submission for the project, and ultimately kind of start the process of executing a project scope and budget agreement with the town. August through October, kind of the community outreach task, showing July as kind of a summer month where people might be on vacation. And then we talked about October 10th being the special town meeting, and then November 7th for the debt exclusion vote.
That it? That sounds like a
That's
good
it.
update to me. I don't
That's
see any other committee members' hands up right now. So I would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
I did
If
have
some-
one unofficial piece of business.
Oh, go ahead.
That visit to the school I did in Acton, while was very eye-opening and interesting, and it was a great demonstration of what was done. It was not really put on by the town, I would say. There was quite a few people there, maybe 80 or so people. I got to ask one question towards the end of it. I tried to squeeze in one for Mary. She was like, did they keep in touch with anybody to see how the system worked afterwards? And I could get it out mostly, and they answered it wrong. They sort of took it like, oh yeah, people, we talked to them. It was like not ownership. It wasn't, does the value, does the building operate the right way? Did it come in on the budget? None of that I got in. It just was not put on. It was put on by engineers. With the idea of, this is the system, this is how it looks, this is how it comes out. It was not nearly as much front end. How does a town come to a decision? How does the ownership work in the process? Ken may have pulled a few more tidbits out of the sort of between the spoken words of how things happen, but I didn't really get everything I thought I would get for how did they go from zero to the school. They sort of went from, how we built it when we knew we were going to build.
Thanks for trying, Nick.
It's all right. I do plan on putting up a bunch of pictures. I actually have them open here. I was trying to squeeze them, download them, and I'll put them up. If there's some place somebody wants me to put them to show, I can in the drive. I can do that. I'll make a little folder for it. Put some notes in
Yeah.
I found too.
Yeah, that would be nice. If you could do that, that'd be perfect.
I never knew you could do a radiant heating and cooling system.
Ah,
I'll ping Chris and Marty with a few ideas of what does this mean? how does this work? And how do they do it for so much less money? But it was like 5 years ago money when they cut the deal, I'm sure. So it's
Yeah,
that too.
okay,
That's it.
thank you. Good, thanks for the update, and I would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn. I guess nobody wants a motion. to
I'll
adjourn?
make that motion.
Thank you,
Mary will
Mary.
make
Is there a
I'll second
second?
the motion. I'm already unmuted.
All right, very good, Nick. Thank you. Roll call. Justin?
Yay.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Krista Silva,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Mary Branley,
Yes.
let's see, Hillary Griffiths not here, Brian,
Yes.
Rob Savoy's not here, Robert Lowe,
Yes.
thank you. Jennifer is off, Wayne,
Yes.
I'm a yes, Mark Anderson,
Yes.
Anthony.
Yeah.
Matthew Johan did not join, Nick,
Yes.
thank you. Unanimous, meeting is officially closed. Thank you very much, everybody.
everyone.
Enjoy the
Thank
nice
you.
weather.
Have a good night.
All right,
Night.
thank you.
Night,
Good night
everybody.
now.